Alright, so this is just a test stream. This is to see what's going on. So if you don't see any video or anything, what I'm doing is making sure that the audio works. So right now it's 4 players, and I'm gonna create the party. And what's gonna happen here is I'm gonna go to my friends list and I'm gonna invite these 3 guys for now. And if anyone shows up, then we're golden. If they don't, they don't. But this is just to make sure. This is just to make sure everything's working. So I want to make sure that people can hear us on the stream, and that's about it. So, now reason for this test stream, it's in preparation for an actual stream. Hey, what's happening? Just explaining to whoever might be watching that this here is a test stream for what I'll be doing later on tonight. Huh? What? What, Sekiro? Well, I just got it. One of my friends was so frustrated with it. He's like, nigga, you can have it. And I was like, alright, I'll take it. So, I got a new game. And basically what I told him is he's kind of garbage at this game. Because it's really simple. It's not a hard game at all. It's different from Dark Souls and Demon Souls and Bloodborne, but it's not a bad game. But yeah, right now I'm test. Yeah, say again. I can't remember. I can't remember what the hell it is either. Oh, word. Oh. Oh, Modern Warfare? Yeah. I know. Oh shit, this guy wants to fight. Alright. Death. Yeah, I'm still getting used to this game, man. It's not. I would have normally said when pigs fly, but now it's more along the lines of it's more along the lines of I wouldn't be surprised at this point, given what Microsoft is trying to do. They're not trying to directly compete anymore. They're just trying to be in the market. You know. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, were you watching the stream too? I'm in practice mode. Oh shit. I'm trying to get used to it. But ninja. Yeah, and then it's weird. Like, I don't know what they're doing for, or what I'm supposed to do here, but I think, yeah. Yep, there it is. You have to deal enough damage to where you can do the, basically a killing blow. What the fuck? Oh, man. Huh. Yeah. Yeah. What I would recommend? Yeah. What I would recommend to any elderly person that's a Democrat and is worried about the political climate is to watch the Joe Rogan podcast, specifically the one that features Dr. Cornel West. Because he kind of, I mean, he's got a lot of knowledge, but moreover, he gives everybody an idea of what's going on. You know, it's enlightening for a lot of people. Because I mean, no matter what, like, the threat of fascism is all over America, and this ain't exactly, you know, the greatest country in the world. People say that, but you know, like everywhere else, it has its problems. But when you know, you live in a country that's kind of rooted in some real evil stuff, you know, it's not uncommon to expect, you know, to see that there are people out there in the political ranks that don't have anyone but their own, you know, selfish interests in mind. So that's how I look at it, because I don't trust Kamala Harris, but I'll give her a chance. You know, I could think of I wouldn't even say a Democrat at this point. You have to, if you want to vote for Bernie Sanders, you got to vote Democrat. You know, if you want to, and that's the way it is. You don't have to, like, you don't really have to have a specific political alignment. You could be a Republican and vote for Democratic leaders. So it doesn't, you know, that part really doesn't matter. That's just a label, you know. And of course, unfortunately, that label, you know, you're either on the red team or the blue team. You either an America version of a Crip or a Blood. That's it. You know. Yeah, everybody wants to be on the right side of history. You know, especially after learning of, you know, tons and tons of atrocities. So yeah. Yeah, this is the guy. He got a lariat from Uncle Snoop. Oh, yeah. YG got a song called "Fuck Donald Trump." Oh, who shot me? I forgot there's dudes with guns in this game. It's a complicated issue. Maybe SPM, but I don't know. You probably haven't heard of South Park Mexican. He was a rapper that he's in prison still. I don't know exactly what the the exact details are, but basically he got a 13-year-old pregnant and then rapped about it in one of his songs. And yeah, and all rappers get themselves screwed by just rapping about shit they're not supposed to do, and the worst part is it's true. And I understand hip-hop draws from life, but we need to stop calling out fake rappers for rapping about stuff they don't really live, because we never did that to Eminem. And he raps about a lot of very gross shit, Yeah. He's the king of hip hop, at least in the face of Jay-Z. Reason for that is his sales. His album sales have always been yeah. Yeah. Well, you got, some of the greatest diss tracks, like No Vaseline from Ice Cube. That was a good one. That was a, oh man, my little man somehow got a screwdriver. Give me that. Yeah, this is the problem with having a 2-year-old. They like to grab stuff they're not supposed to have and then run at lightning speed when they know you see them with it. So, and having nieces and nephews is nothing like having your own. Like, it's funny because you'll put the utmost care into your nieces and nephews, mostly because they ain't your kids, and if anything happens to them, your family gonna kill you. so there's the threat of, if you don't take responsibility, you're gonna end up in a worse place with your fam. But when it comes to having your own kid, number one, you gonna cry. Like, when that baby comes out, I don't care who you are, you gonna cry. Not necessarily in front of everybody, because I didn't. Yeah. Yeah. It'll it, it, yeah. Bro, I just got killed by a chicken. Like, that chicken just killed me. I was staring for a second too, and I forgot that this game has like yeah, I forgot that this game has a resurrection. So like in Dark Souls, when you die, you die. Like there's no coming back from that. You got to go back to where your bloodstain is in the level. So if it's in a boss room, you know, you got to dodge whatever swipes the boss is throwing at you, and then stop that kid. You know, you got to dodge the boss until you get your bloodstain. That way you can get all of your money and your items and your experience back. But in this game, if you die, you lose all the shit you collected. Everything is gone. Yeah. So that's why that resurrect function is there. So if you resurrect, that gives you, you know, a chance to get back up, defeat the enemy, and run back to like a statue, you know, or a bonfire, as they would call it in Dark Souls. And so if you do that, you'll be straight. You know, this is a small area, so this is actually the beginning of the game. There we go. Now what's really cool, I got my son on some modern hip hop. I try to put him on some old stuff, you know, like Cream by the Wu-Tang Clan. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's oh yeah. Yeah, it's you know, it's one part conspiracy theory, but I look at it this way: everybody that would have been guilty in that, they're all being griefed by the karma system. You know, you get out of this world the energy you put in. So if oh yeah. Shoot. He's a bully. Yeah. if you watch the DJ Vlad interview with Little Easy, that's his son. He you know, he'll talk about how it was a little strange that he died from, you know, HIV or AIDS, really. Messed that one up. But yeah, he'll talk. They'll you know, you'll see him and DJ Vlad actually conversate about that, and one of the things that, yeah, he said that the way that he died was still kind of weird because nobody dies from AIDS like that, you know, not that fast. And with Ice Cube, you know, the way he explained Eazy-E disappearing is the same way he pretty much died in Straight Outta Compton. If you remember, he got diagnosed, you know, with HIV, you know, and then right after, you know, he decided he was gonna do like a comeback or whatever. So he made a you know, he decided to reach out to Ice Cube, and you know, they had that little meeting, you know, at the club or whatever, and then after that, you just never saw him again. And the way that scene played out was exactly how he explained it in an interview that he talked about that several years ago, you know. Yeah. It's a dramatization. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It it's something like I can say this: the older you get, the wiser you get. That's probably the weirdest thing. That's probably a cliched line, but it's true. It. Uh-oh. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, I ain't that old, man. I'm only 10 years older, man. So that's yeah. I'm from the 80s. But that I gotta figure out how to use this. Oh, loaded shuriken. Cool. How do you use this? It's not O. It's not triangle. Is it? No, it's not R1. Oh, it's that. That's what it is. It's R2. Yeah, I'm still learning this game. And I believe my son just ran past me with some very expensive stuff. Oh, man. He got into the cabinet. Yeah, it's Friday, so instead of like Sesame Street and everything else, I got him on, you know, music videos. Because he loves watching. He likes modern music, you know. And it's like what a lot of people say, the, you know, If your parents don't this is what Lil Yachty said. You know, I don't care if if your parents don't like me, your kids do, and it's true. The kids love Lil Yachty. You know, and it's there's this push pull, and the same thing is happening in the games industry. Like you can see it, you can see it in the group. You can see it in Black Gamers Planet. There's people who, you know, they stick to certain things. You know, some folks only play trending video games. They don't necessarily step outside the box. But then, you know, when you think about people from my era in gaming, right? Like the 80s, you know, the 80s babies that grew up in the 90s with the Nintendo and the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, right? So, you know, Big had a line in Juicy where he's like, Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, when I was dead broke, I couldn't picture this. You know, I was 8 when, you know, that song came out. Hold up. You can't put shorts on shorts, kid. Okay, fine. Nintendo, the Nintendo is this like gray and black box that takes like cartridges. It's like you know when they released the NES Classic, that was what people called the Nintendo. And since the GameCube was 2001, the NES was 1985, the Famicom was 1983, and after that you had, the Sega Mark II, which was the Sega Master System, and then shortly after the Sega Genesis release, they reworked that into the Sega Game Gear to compete with Nintendo's Game Boy that was released in 1989, and that was the same year the Sega Genesis released in the US, and that was just to get the jump on Nintendo's new console, the Super Famicom or Super NES. So, Super Nintendo Entertainment System. That's what it's like, it's some old school shit. But when I was playing games on the NES, games like Contra, Super Mario Brothers, Zelda, you know, Donkey Kong, all that stuff was popular because no one had seen anything like that before. Tetris was another one. So these games, as simple as they were, basically took over. Like everybody was like, I gotta have this. In fact, in the US, everybody, like the NES was sold out, like everywhere. Like the same way the Switch had shortages and the same way the Wii had shortages, it's the same way. I think the only console generation where Nintendo didn't have problems keeping stock on shelves was the what's it called? I think it was the Nintendo, or no, the GameCube. The GameCube was the only Nintendo console you could just walk into a Walmart and find right after it released. You know, because people wanted to buy an Xbox, and that was it. You know, but like I said, the late 80s and the early 90s, you know, everything was new. So the games that I played back in the day were always interesting. When the PlayStation came out, that's when you had stuff like Grand Theft Auto and Crash Bandicoot, and, you know, RPGs were popular, mainly Final Fantasy VII, you know, that kind of spearheaded that popularity. Yeah. I had one of those. GameCube's... Yeah, they had Mario Sunshine and stuff. They had... What else did they have on there? They had a few games. I can't... I can't remember for the life of me right now. Oh, Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles was one. There was who that? Oh yeah. Perfect controller for playing Smash though. Perfect for it. I bought a GameCube controller adapter and a GameCube controller just to play Smash Ultimate on my Switch. So I appreciated the fact that Nintendo actually did that. I don't know why they didn't just, you know, create a USB hub and repurpose the GameCube controller to be a USB controller instead of a GameCube controller, but that's what they did. So you want to sit down with me, little man? My son wants to watch me play video games. Careful there, kid. He's like, nah, I changed my mind. But yeah, he's a little. That's another thing, like going, you know, full circle back to like one of the earlier combos about the political climate here in America. Like, my son is, you know, he's halfway. So, and I had to explain this to my, you know, my girlfriend's mother. I'm like, you do realize that you have a black son, and so you have to deal with the fear of, you know, there's this idea, or you have to deal with the possibility that, you know, either him or I could, you know, get, you know, tied up with the law for, you know, for something stupid. And honestly, it's not what you want, you know. So it's like, yeah, you know. Kinda. It's like, yeah, it's not that simple. Like my dad, for example, he one of the problems he had to deal with growing up was that people would constantly mistake him for white and then say some really horrible things about black people around him. And yeah, and that that's not a good thing. So when you grow up that way, you know, there are issues. And one of the other things I had to deal with growing up with, like me, I don't code switch. You know, this is how I talk all the time. And for a lot of, like, I tell all the kids I grew up with, you know, well, they're not kids anymore. We're all adults now, but, you know, everybody I grew up with, I'm like, look, we have a completely different experience, man. Growing up, we might have gone to the same city and went to the same schools, but the society in that school and in that city treated us very different, you know. So I had to deal with classism, and I had to deal with ignorance on all sides of the spectrum. It just wasn't, you know, and this is just from talking a certain way. This isn't even, you know, in living where I lived. You know, so that's a part of adversity that, you know, a lot of people aren't really privy to, but that is a thing that people have to deal with. Like me and my older sister had to deal with that. My brothers, on the other hand, they're too legit to quit. It's like when I say they wanted to do hood rat stuff with their friends, I'm not kidding. That's exactly what they wanted to do. You know, and you know, these are 4 kids who, my mom, you know, she's originally from Alabama, but they, you know, fled to New York to escape the racism. And then my dad, you know, he was born and raised in South London. So for him, he had to deal with that same racial adversity on top of the IRA terrorizing people, you know. And the IRA, you know, they're basically like some people describe them as Irish mafia or whatever. It's, you know, it's organized crime based out of Ireland, you know. If you watch Sons of Anarchy, you kind of get like a little snippet of what they might be like. You have an idea, you know. But we're talking about a time where apartheid was still a thing in Africa. Margaret Thatcher was one of the worst queens in the history of the world, and the IRA was terrorizing everybody in London. So, you know, what we're dealing with now isn't that far removed from what was already going on in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, you know? So, that's just, the only thing we can do with that is you know, vote against it. That's all you really can do. And then you can't really, you know, I'm not going to be cynical and say that it's impossible to get rid of racism, but you can mitigate it. You know, you can make sure it's at the bare minimum. We're already kind of taking steps towards that now. You know, you got a lot of people complaining about being politically correct, not understanding what the term being PC actually is. It's not the fact that a white person can't say inherently sexist, homophobic, and racist things. You know, it's the fact that you're supposed to call somebody by their title, sir or ma'am, that you have to be polite. You can't just, you know what I mean? You can't, it'd be more proper for you to say my brother instead of my nigga, basically. That's what being politically correct is. It's using the proper terminology for everything and everyone involved in your current life, you know. So, and Clint Eastwood and Ted Nugent, who else? There's a few other people, even Chris Rock, although his definition of politically correct is a little bit different from this is weird too, because in some of his old like 90s stand-ups on HBO, he didn't have his idea of political correctness was different. You know, it was exactly how I explained it. It was about being polite, not using ebonics, you know, things like that. And, you know, now when he says PC, he's simply talking about how overly sensitive people are, because I do believe that as well. I think people are still very sensitive to a lot of, you know, recurring themes in society, and in shinobi style skills. Cool. Huh. That is awesome. But yeah, huh. That's awesome. Okay, I guess that doesn't need anything. But yeah, I was saying, like, political, you know, as far as that specific comedian speaking of political correctness, there's, you know, there's, like I said, two sides to it, to the whole thing. You know, on one part, it is, you know, calling people by their proper title and name, and on the other hand, it's about, you know, having to be privy to actually being as polite as possible, even when, you know, you're not even when you think you don't have to be. It's like when you call a man her, and he clearly looks like a woman, but because he's trans, he corrects you and says, call me he or they, you know? And at that point, you have to respect that and, you know, call them by that specific type, you know? Now, I think this stuff is a bit superfluous, but, you know, I'm a principled human being, so I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna do this, that, or the other just because. I'm gonna keep believing and saying no. If whatever makes you more, if that's what I gotta do, you know, that's a very simple thing. It's not me changing anything up, you know. You tell me once if I slip up and call you she or her instead of he or him or they, you know, I'll probably end up correcting myself right after saying it anyway, you know. And then people don't hold mistakes against you, you know. Like that's dumb. You know, I don't think anybody should hold certain missteps in your speech against you, unless of course you're blatantly being an asshole. That's a different story. Yeah, that's completely different. But that is literally oh, what is this? When surrounded by enemies. Oh, okay. I could have used that before I died earlier. But yeah, that's yeah. Spirit emblem. Let me see. Let me get one of these. Oh, Grand Theft Auto. Well, yeah. Oh yeah. We were originally gonna buy another PS4, but we decided against it because it didn't make any sense for us to buy another PS4. First off, it doesn't make any sense to buy a vanilla PS4 at this point in time because hey, what's happening? The vanilla PS4. Yeah, I've never had to change my PSN ID whenever I've signed into PSN on my PlayStation TV, the PSP, the Vita, the PS3, the PS4. It's all been the same, so it doesn't matter. And as long as you have PSN Plus, all platforms are covered. So, oh, let go of that. Oh no, you're gonna start from scratch. And I think that's one of the problems with Grand Theft Auto 5 and Red Dead Redemption 2, because you see, you have a game that's now been supported for the last 6 years, in a game that's got support for the last like 6 months or 8 months, I should say, because that's when Red Dead Redemption 2 came out, about that time frame. So not even. Yeah. No, yeah, we could say 8 months. RDR2 is not that old. So the game's less than a year old, and it's getting online updates pretty much at the same rate that Grand Theft Auto 5 is. But Grand Theft Auto 5 is a much older game, and both of them are very similar. Oh, the phone is ringing. Who is calling? I'm not answering it. Everybody in the house has cellular phones. We only use the house phone whenever, like, the phone, whenever our phones are off or whatever. You know, we don't. It's funny. It's funny how that works. But yeah, well, I'm glad the. So by the way, the audio from the chat was coming out in the stream, right? Because I'm not watching the stream right now. Yeah. So if the oh, okay, combat arts. Now I gotta equip that one. The reason why I asked that is because, like, this is a test stream. I'm trying to make sure that everything works, because at 10 p.m. Eastern time, I'm gonna be going live again, but this time with a limited amount of people in the group. Who knows? I might just say fuck it and go all out and go up to 8, and then just have everybody commentate. But the subject matter that I'll be covering, is more on the lines of fighting games and how Mortal Kombat can actually work as a rated teen fighting game or PG-13 movie, because it has before. I mean, everybody has fond memories of the old 90s films, and oh, what are you doing, little man? Come on, no, don't mess with that. But yeah, and at around that time frame, I don't have my toddler interrupting and stuff either, so there'll be less outside interference and stuff. So look forward to that. If you want to join, I might just up the count from 4 to 8, but it's really just to keep time, because I'm gonna run the stream. Now remember, this is Eastern time because I live in Florida, so the stream's gonna start at 10 p.m. Eastern and end at 12 a.m. Eastern time. If things end up going a little longer, I might things are extra interesting, I might run the stream a little longer. But for the most part, that's what's happening. But basically, I'll be going on about how violence in video games isn't everything, and how like Mortal Kombat. This is the funny thing about it. And I guess this will be just like a little snippet, but Mortal Kombat can work by being an over-the-top, gory and graphic fighting game without using every aspect of the M rating, as far as violence is concerned. And the reason I say that is because there's a fighting game by Capcom called Darkstalkers, where instead of having, human characters, well, there are human characters, but there's like 2 of them. Everybody is a nightmare creature. You have Zabul Zarak, or Lord Raptor. He's basically a British zombie or Australian zombie. You have Morrigan. Everybody knows who Morrigan is. She's the green-haired chick with the bat wings. Everybody knows who she is. Chun-Li has a costume based on her in Street Fighter V. But yeah, she's a succubus. And then you have Dimitri the vampire. You have Victor von Gerdenheim. He's a Frankenstein. Sasquatch. I don't think I need to go in depth as what Sasquatch is. And you already know that that's, besides Victor, obviously Sasquatch is the other grappler of the game. And then you've got Bishamon, who's basically this guy who's trapped in this haunted piece of samurai, haunted samurai armor. So there's, what I mean? They're all nightmare creatures. Allbath, who's a fishman, So they did a good job with this. Now the thing about Darkstalkers, right? People get chopped in half in a very humorous manner. People get burnt in a very humorous manner. People are dismembered. They get their heads chopped off in a very humorous manner. And Mortal Kombat's violence, as brutal and graphic and disgusting as it is, that's only in recent times. I'd say MK9 or MK9, 10, and 11 are violent for the sake of being disgusting and less about just being visceral and comedic. Like the first three games and everything in between those and the new set is, you know. So it's clear that Midway can do this, you know. It can be done, you know. There's even room for Capcom. Like, you can do a Mortal Kombat versus Vampire or Darkstalkers, whichever name they decide, and it'll still fit within the lines of what they were trying to do. Like, the producer of Street Fighter V once said that, like, the reason why there's no Street Fighter versus Mortal Kombat, because it wouldn't feel right if, you know, Chun-Li was getting her head ripped off by, you know, another character, you know, by Sub-Zero or whatever. That wouldn't make any sense, and we don't see that character like that to begin with. You know, the best that Street Fighter would be able to do with an M rating is blood, vomit, and nudity. That's it. And that's because we've already seen these characters in that light already. Because there's vomiting in Street Fighter 2 for the Super Nintendo. If you punch somebody, you get a vomit animation. That's facts. And what's funny, and they took that out. So none of like, ever since Vanilla 2, or Turbo, I should say, I've never seen a Street Fighter character that will actually vomit if hit in the gut. That's gone. And if you have vomiting in your game, it brings the age rating up just because of that. So a lot of people don't know that. And then, like I said, with Darkstalkers, since there's a hell of a lot of blood, we're talking on the level of Samurai Showdown or Guilty Gear, or we could even say Mortal Kombat level blood, because the blood not only sprays, it stays on the ground for a little bit before disappearing, just like Mortal Kombat. So, you know, the Vampire series or Darkstalker series, if you're, you know, from the West, it matches up with what NetherRealm is trying to do with Mortal Kombat. So yes, Capcom can make an MK versus Darkstalkers game, but they wouldn't be able to do an MK versus Street Fighter game without toning down Mortal Kombat characters. You know, and yeah, and that's Tekken. Hell yeah. Tekken 7. Well, here's the thing about Tekken. It's never not been popular. Tekken 4 was the low point in the series, and even that game was better, you know, was better than most. Like, Virtua Fighter, the granddaddy of 3D fighting games, right? That game came out in 1993, and they're on their fifth, you know, the fifth game. Virtua Fighter 3 was basically Sega's Tekken 4. You know, but the difference between Tekken and Virtua Fighter is, even though Virtua Fighter is a lot more simple, but also way more refined than most 3D fighters, it's also one of the harder fighting games to play. It is far more difficult for you to actually buffer and, you know, do attacks. Like, people complain about one frame links in Street Fighter 4 and 5, but Virtua Fighter has one frame links, you know. So what I would say to anybody, like, and Virtua Fighter is not a bad fighting game to start playing fighting games, you know, 3D fighters with, but the skill curve and the difficulty curve on that game is something fierce. And, like, for me, I've been put through the grinder. The first Virtua Fighter I actually played was Virtua Fighter 2 on the Sega Saturn. So we had that. We actually had one of those before we got a PlayStation, you know. So, yeah. There was word of the Fight Night team returning to make another Fight Night, and then I've also heard that UFC is the reason why there aren't any more Fight Nights. But the Fight Night team is the reason why Def Jam Icon is such a terrible game. Yeah, those guys. The Japanese dev team, I think it was Aki that actually developed Def Jam Vendetta, and then EA was like, all right, we got the formula, so they didn't need them anymore. So this time they developed Fight for New York in-house using the engine that they use from a Japanese developer. Now, what's funny about EA is that they're not at all unfamiliar with publishing Japanese developed games, or even funding, Japanese developed games. They actually publish Japan only games in Japan. There's this fighting game called Rabbit for the Sega Saturn and PlayStation, and yeah, it's a very well animated game, large sprites, the whole 9 yards. It's a dream fighting game. It's really good. The issue with Rabbit is that it just didn't get a US release. That's really the worst of it, But yeah, it was one of the few games. And then get this, Electronic Arts is also responsible for publishing Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, 10, Xenogears, Parasite Eve, basically the majority of Square Enix's or Squaresoft's catalog on the PlayStation and PS2 up until 2003. So even Kingdom Hearts was co-published by EA Games here in the States. So yeah, interesting stuff there. So yeah, what's funny is that the guy who made what's it called, Twisted Metal, David Jaffe, he would of course go on to direct the first and second God of War games before leaving the dev team to work on Twisted Metal for the PS3. But an interesting thing about that is when he started development on Twisted Metal for the PlayStation, he actually saw what Sony was doing with the original PlayStation console and what the Japanese developers were doing. And one of the things he said was that, our games suck compared to Japan's. He said that. And because of this, Twisted Metal ended up being a much better game in its second iteration. There was he tried to do what he could with the first game, but once that was all said and done, Twisted Metal somehow ended up being a success, and then Twisted Metal 2 ended up being a major success. Basically after the first game was so successful. And then he put stuff in like fighting game commands. There's actual button motions, like if you press like quarter circle, left or right, and square, you'll get certain abilities from certain characters. So you had cars that basically worked as if you were playing Mortal Kombat, and other cars that worked as if you were playing Street Fighter. And he basically added command specials to from fighting games into a car combat game. And you know, that's pretty much what we got. David Jaffe is also the reason why God of War is so good. Again, if you've played Devil May Cry, you know, from Capcom, you'll notice that the first and second God of War games are very similar in how they play. You know, frame rate, draw distance, you know, combat, all that. So if it wasn't for, you know, this one guy paying attention to how, you know, the rivals did it better, I don't think we would have the God of War games that we have now. Now, God of War 4 is a massive departure from, you know, the series proper. It focuses more on a lower frame rate. Instead of 60, it targets 30. Large scale environments and, you know, fights just like God of War 3. Combat is simple enough, you know, it's not too complex. There's not a whole lot of you know, John Woo challenge going on there, like God of War 3 is actually really good on the PS4. It was a PS3 game, but one of the things that they did was they actually made it so that it ran at 60 frames per second on the PS4. So, and in my case, I have a PS4 Pro, so games run significantly better. Although I'll be honest, I think I might set my PS4 back to 4K or 2160p, because if you have a PS4 Pro and you have a 1080p display, you can super sample your games. So basically, the games will look better, and they'll what's the word I'm looking for? They'll look better and they'll run better for the most part. But the PS4 Pro is also the ultimate 1080p console. Like, for example, I have Kingdom Hearts 3 on the Xbox One, and I have an Xbox One X. So even though the Xbox One X version goes up to like 1800p, which is significantly higher than what the PS4 Pro could do, if I set the PS4 Pro to 1080p on any display, I automatically get a near locked 60 frames per second. Whereas on the Xbox One X, I might have those extra pixels, but the frame rate suffers, and I have, the Xbox One X will run that game 5 to 10 frames lower than the PS4 Pro would when it's set to 1080. So a lot of how you play your games graphically, it's a min-max thing. And then in games like this, like Sekiro, the One X actually has a 120 hertz option. So if you I'm messing up here. Yeah. But it's got a 120 hertz option. And the issue with this game is that there's frame pacing issues, or at least there was. I don't see any real improperly paced frames. But frame pacing issues are basically where you get judder from playing the game. Like if you move the camera, it moves a little choppy. And this is basically a result in uneven frame pacing. You can fix that. Oh, this kid really loves Sonic the Hedgehog 3. It's got my Genesis card. But with uneven frame pacing, it could make games not look as good as they could. Most people don't mind bad frame rates in video games. The developers of Ratchet and Clank, Insomniac Games, they even said that the reason they targeted 30 FPS instead of 60 for Into the Nexus was because people like prettier games. Oh, what's going on, kid? What you mad at? Well, you put the cartridge in the printer, and then he couldn't reach it. That's why. Don't put stuff where you're not supposed to, kid. Oh shit, he seen me. Well, it's time to sucker. I'll just hide in the bushes, you know. They won't find me. Oh, he found me, and now he's swiping at nothing. Great. But yeah, most people don't care about low frame rates. Ratchet and Clank Into the Nexus actually sold the most out of all the games in the series when they just targeted the highest graphical fidelity ever. They didn't, you know, they tried to stabilize the game as much as they could, but for the most part, people don't really care about high frame rates, and that's kind of a shame, because that's actually what makes some of the older games, you know, out there so much better. There's actually there was one group member that actually asked that question. It was like, is it me, or do older game engines run smoother than the newer games? And of course, his examples were the difference between Madden 2005 and NBA 2K5 and the current games. And the truth is, it's all a design decision, because Ratchet and Clank has been remade for the PS4, and now with a PS4 Pro or even a vanilla PS4, it pretty much looks like a Disney Pixar film. It is the resemblance on what you would see on Netflix or the silver screen, and what you would see in a console game is just, it's ridiculous. It's gotten to that level now. You know, the CG films that we used to watch back in the 90s and early 2000s, that's what our video games look like now. And yeah, and like I said, there's no bigger example than Ratchet and Clank, or even Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled. Damn dogs. Or dogs are the worst enemy in a game about ninjas. Where did this kid go? I think. Yeah, I gotta make sure my kid isn't destroying the house. Well, I appreciate you coming on the stream and actually watching it. So this is just a test stream, but remember, at 10 p.m. Eastern, I'll be running the actual stream where we'll go, you know, where I'll go a little more in depth about basically fighting games and, you know, MK more specifically at that time. So just be on the lookout for that. I'll be doing that for about 2 hours. If we run out of content, obviously, you know, we were improvising with shit here, so I'll try to keep it a little more professional, of course, but it's all a work in progress. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to like do these streams where I get, you know, members from the group engaged in conversations about these games and stuff instead of typing with my thumbs. So yeah, it's one of those things. So yeah, oh, appreciate that. I don't have a lot of subscribers, but yeah, anybody that subscribes is mostly appreciated. So yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that'll work. Alright, I'll catch up with you. Alright, Joe. Alright, let's see here.